and how the artist was able to create a piece that is really pleasing to the eye, and how you are able to apply them into your own artwork. So we're going to start with the elements. We have 6 basic elements that are used in art and graphic design, and you can think of these elements as tools. So almost every single art piece that you see is going to use multiple elements in order to create that piece of art. So regardless of whether it's a painting, a drawing, a sculpture, a building, a photograph, you're going to see these elements in place. The first one is the simplest form of art that we have, and that's a line. So a line is defined as a point or a path that moves through space. These lines can take on many different forms. So they could be active or passive. They could be flowing or light. You can have them in any direction. They could be very thick or very thin. They can be broken or continuous. They can be implied, which gives the illusion of a line being there, or it can be an actual line. You can have them in different directions, so perpendicular or parallel, diagonal, straight. They could be curved, long or short, geometric, precise, or irregular. There are so many different ways that you can use lines. If you take the lines and combine them into a closed form, then you get shape. So this is going back all the way to kindergarten, where you learned about your basic shapes: circles, triangles, squares, rectangles. You can get a star or a diamond. So putting together all of those different lines and putting them into a form of some kind gives you a shape. So not only do you have your geometric shapes, like what I talked about with what you learned in kindergarten, but you can also have something that's very organic looking, like a cloud, nice and fluffy. You can have something that's free form, like a little blob here, or you can have things that are found in nature, such as a leaf or the spiral shape of a snail, of its shell. Now, if you take those shapes and you make them look three-dimensional, or you actually have a three-dimensional shape if you're doing a sculpture or architecture, then you get what's known as form. So with form, you have height, width, and depth. So you have 3 dimensions to it. And then if it's enclosed, you can also have volume. So here in this image right here, this is from M.C. Escher. So he does a lot of great pencil or charcoal sketches. And here he gave the illusion of having a glass sphere. So a lot of artists use shading to make sure that they give that illusion of depth with their forms. Same with the hand. Oops, sorry guys. Same with the hand here. It looks very three-dimensional, gives the implication of having depth to it, but this is all two-dimensional, so it's all completely flat. So that is a nice trick that artists use, is to fool the eye to give that three-dimensional look. Artists also have to worry about the space that they use. So space is the area between and around the objects that an artist is going to put on their canvas or onto their main artwork. And the space that is empty is called negative space. Negative space is very important because it does impact your artwork. The space that you use is going to help determine the distance between where your objects are going to be, because you have to help continue that illusion of depth and perception. So putting things farther away or closer together helps with that. And we're going to look at the next one, which helps with this as well, and that is, oops, sorry, wrong one. We were going to do size, but that'll come up later. Another thing with space is composition. So composition refers to the placement or arrangement of the elements of your artwork. So with this image right here, having a larger fishbowl with a small fish and a smaller fishbowl with a large goldfish and placing them close together. So how that artist used that space really made it impactful for this whole art piece. So how you arrange your images is composition. All right, next is color. Every piece of artwork has color. If you don't have color, you don't have art. So color is broken up into three main categories. So hue is what we call with the main name of the color. So that's when you have your red, green, blue, purple, gold, silver, black, white. That's known as the hue. Then how light or dark that color is known as the value. And then intensity is how bright or dull those colors are. Color is so incredibly important in art because it helps convey feeling and emotion for your audience. So colors can come in categories or groups together, and we have the cool categories, so those that give the illusion of a cool feeling, or warm. And there are other categories as well. All right, this is the last element that we're going to take a look at, and it's called texture. Now, of course, there are artists that deal with tangible artwork, so real three-dimensional artwork, and you can use actual texture so we can actually feel what the object is. But most artwork is going to be two-dimensional or flat, and so we can't really see or feel what the artist is trying to give us, such as in this image right here. So artists not only have to work to give the illusion of three dimension, but also texture. So texture refers to what we would feel. So you can imagine this being very prickly, pokey, with all of these pins sticking out that way, but you can have soft textures, so something like a cloud or cotton or a bunny rabbit. You can have sandpaper. You can have the feel of brick or concrete. So it all is in the job of the artist to give that illusion to help the audience feel as though they're a part of their artwork and imagine the actual feeling of it. All right, now we're going to look at principles. So the elements were the tools that an artist used, and like I said, almost every piece of artwork is going to have multiple elements in place, but principles are a little bit different. So these are the rules that artists use to put their pieces together to create their artwork. So not every artwork is going to have each principle within it. One thing that artists do want to look for and take note of is the balance. The balance is how well they distribute the visual weight of the objects that they place within their artwork. This could be the actual object, it could be the colors that they use, how much texture is used, and how they use their space. So we have three main ways that artists can balance their work. They can have it be symmetrical, where it's perfectly balanced, either vertical or horizontal on their space. It could be asymmetrical, which means there is no balance or one side is heavier than the other. Or you can have a radial balance, which means that it flows in a circular direction. Next is emphasis. And emphasis you can also think of as contrast, because emphasis is something specific that an artist will put into his or her art piece to draw the eye and make it stand out. So this could be done with color, it could be done with shape. So that's kind of both in this image here. You have a lighter blue color and you have the star shape amongst all of these oval rock shapes. You could also have it be with size and dominance. So if something is incredibly small or large in relation to what is surrounding it. Detail is another way you can add emphasis. If you have one thing that's highly detailed and surrounded by things that are not. You can have contrast, which is a significant opposite correlation, so black to white, red to black, yellow against white, something that really pops. And then, of course, you can have isolation. So you can have one object that's like over by itself and everything else to one side. So emphasis is used a lot in art to really draw the eye. There are those examples that I was talking about. All right, movement. Movement is difficult to obtain as an artist because you're trying to give the illusion of actual movement within a two-dimensional piece. So movement can be thought of in two ways. It refers to how an artist will depict the movement of the elements and principles of art, or the visual flow of the artwork, such as what path the eye will take. So you can use that with lines or edges. You can use it with your shapes, and of course colors. So you can have movement that's diagonal, vertical, horizontal. You can have curving movement, flowing movement, or progressive movement. So this one kind of has both the curving, you can see the curves. It has flowing because it's all flowing out. And then it's progressive because it starts here in the center and then progresses outward. So this has several different ways that movement is achieved. And there are those examples. All right, next we have pattern. So pattern is just having a repetition of an object or a symbol within the artwork in a very, in a manner in which you know what's going to come next. So it's a very determined repetition. So on this one here, we have the repetition of colors. You also have the repetition of shape. So the entire piece is made up of nothing but circles. And actually we do have some line there for that contrast. And then it's just the repetition of that color pattern going for this part making up the fish and then the waters in the outline. So along with pattern is going to be your repetition. So pattern is something where you can predict what's going to come next. With repetition, doesn't necessarily have to be a prediction. You can just make it completely random. So on this image here, they repeat the figure here, this man, throughout to make it look like rain falling down. And then you have your background is the same, so they're repeating the building, but the main part that is the repetition would be this object here. Next is proportion or scale. And proportion is really just the size relationship between the parts that are in your artwork. Proportion could be where you keep things the way that they're found in nature, so that a size of a head for a human is in correct proportion to what it would be with a body. Sometimes you can deliberately change proportions to make a head rather large and then the body small, and then that would be part of your emphasis and contrast as well. So proportion is just really how you determine the size of your objects, how many of them, and then the number of them. Rhythm, it kind of goes along with movement. So rhythm is another one that's kind of difficult to achieve. it is done using lines, shapes, and colors, just like we did with movement, but it helps create a visual tempo of your artwork and provides a flowing path for the eyes to follow. So you're going to have something with repetition and movement combined, and that gives you a rhythm. So if you can think of artwork being converted into a musical form, that's what rhythm is. All right, now we have unity. Unity is also called harmony. And what this is just really making sure that the artwork is cohesive, that everything fits together. So artists who are able to combine all of those elements and principles together into one piece that looks like it fits well is said to have unity. So this one here just has black and white for its coloring. You can see that it has symmetrical balance, so it's equal on both sides. There is repetition between these two main objects and the tree with the leaves. You also have a little bit of movement or rhythm with the leaves and how they flow. And then you have proportion with the size of the deer and